the canopy, but it's just less high of a score. And then they're much higher when it comes to extreme heat days and cooling degree days. And then there you go. And then the highest score total is 38 from Los Animas, and then the lowest score is 3 from Leta. So that just shows the total variation in scoring that we have in this index.
Yeah, once we were done with that high level statewide needs assessment, we then went into the 3 of our pilot communities doing the next part, which was the on the ground tree inventory and identifying plantable sites, as well as the trees themselves that existed in the small, we did mostly like 5x5 blocks in each of the communities. And since each of the communities have already done or were currently working on a tree inventory of their own, looking at the right-of-way and city-owned trees, we focused primarily on residential properties. And to figure out which 5x5 blocks we worked in, we did that general assessment of potential sites by narrowing down to just looking at DICs in each of these 3 communities. And then we overlaid it with the tree equity score and pulled out neighborhoods that were most vulnerable with their canopy. After we had that list, we went around and physically toured all of those neighborhoods that were potentials, just to ground truth, make sure that tree equity score was updated enough that it was reflecting what was physically there. That also narrowed our list down. And then once we had that list, we then met with each of the community's city staff. We had big kind of like cohorts from each department with us on that meeting to provide insight to their experience working in these neighborhoods. So once we had our list, they kind of helped us figure out which sites we should actually work in. And so Aurora is a little different because they recently completed an inventory that did look at the residential sites that we wanted to work in. So instead of duplicating their efforts, we focused on plantable sites only and did 3 sections across Aurora instead of 1. And yeah, so you can see how many sites we identified. And I will also note that the trees inventoried, since we were working in residential areas, we didn't do backyards or anything. So this is definitely limited to what we could see from the sidewalks. If we could tell what the species and condition was from the street, from the backyard, we included it, but there's definitely not every tree is accounted for. And here you can just see all of the points that we plotted. We used co-tree view. Aurora, these are all of the plantable sites that we noted. And then Commerce City and Greeley, those are a mix of all the trees and the plantable sites. Based on the trees we inventoried, we noticed that the top species in Commerce City and Greeley were both Siberian elm. Other top species in Commerce City were green ash and tree of heaven. And then Greeley had honey locust, green ash, and silver maple, as well as their top species that we noted in those residential areas. Then on the right, you can see the condition that we found. Unfortunately, a lot of it was in that fair to less than fair condition. So yeah, just that compounded with the fact that these are not necessarily ideal species for residents to plant, was telling us that they should probably replace those trees and get better canopy in there. As for Aurora, we pulled out the data that they already had available to us. They shared it with us, which was really nice of them. And these were their top species, honey locust, green ash, and Norway maple in those areas that we identified plantable sites in. And their canopy was a little bit better than the other 2. Here's just we pulled out the ecosystem benefits. Not sure how interesting this is to you, but it was nice for us to just visualize the kind of benefits environmentally that they had, as well as just the underlying fact that it's going to make their residents not feel the heat as bad. But yeah, with all of that said, our main takeaway for the cities that we're going to tell them is that just increasing that canopy in the residential areas is going to be really beneficial for those residents. Yeah, and then to move on to the next section, we had 3 more questions just to set the stage because we moved into our community engagement aspect after we did the inventory.
Yeah,
Okay. I think I know where it is. So the first question is what are the top challenges that you encounter after planting trees?
This could be just a couple words.
That doesn't show up.
Okay, that's what I was worried about. Okay, let me.
Oh.
There it is.
Cool.
That's right.
There's a theme.
Yeah, if you haven't used this before, the more a word is put in, the bigger it is. So
That's good.
Death by more.
I like the word clouds.
Yeah. Abandoned. Deep. Squirrel damage.
okay, I'm gonna move to the next one.
We see a theme.
If you let me. The next question is, what barriers do you hear residents bring up the most? Whether it be for planting, just taking care of it, whatever comes to mind.
The word.
Wow.
The trees forest.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
This is an unbiased sort of man view. What is that? Yeah.
I'm learning so much from this.
That's not a thing. I don't know.
Okay, cool. We have one last one, so I'm gonna move on. The last one is, what top benefits of trees do you emphasize first in your communications that like resonates with most people?
Yeah, this is what we saw a lot during our own community engagement. So none of these results are too surprising, but agreed. Okay, I'm gonna move on from this then. Thank you all for participating. If I can figure out how. Okay. So as we talked about earlier, a major requirement of a healthy, successful urban forest is getting the community to buy into this and really want to see this be, or their urban forest to be healthy and successful. But getting that buy-in is very difficult. And so one of the main themes of this project was really to think about like, how can we work with residents and talk with residents to get that buy-in? Like, what are the gaps? What can we bridge to be able to get people on board and make them excited about trees? And so we went into Commerce City and Aurora to speak with the local community. In Aurora, we specifically tried to speak with people in the areas that we did the research, that we did our inventory, and then we'll talk about Greeley separately in a moment. Our engagement methods were tabling. So for example, in Commerce City, we went to Music in the Park and Speak Up Commerce City. We brought with us surveys, which we also just did at other events as well in Aurora. And we had physical paper copies of the surveys. We had QR codes so people could do it on their phone. And then we also just asked residents to talk with us. And residents mostly wanted to speak with us and tell them their thoughts about trees. So we had some really good discussions. People were really against an online survey, which we thought was fun. So we had a lot of paper copies and spoke with so many people, which was great. And then we also did some outreach to local organizations. We had a bit of struggle with that. I think mostly because we are, grad students, not necessarily working in the community and building these long-term relationships. So that wasn't quite as successful, but we did speak with some people in the neighborhood and the communities that did give some good insights and were, excited to talk about trees and hear that there's, some attention in working with the residents about it. So here are just some engagement results. We had quite a few questions in our surveys, and not everybody answered all the questions. But for Aurora, 74% of residents said that trees were really important to their neighborhood, and then 65% said that they wanted more trees. So we were happy to see that quite a few people were, interested and excited about trees. There might have been a bit of bias since people, wanted to come over and talk to us when I saw that we were talking about trees. So keeping that in mind. And then we also asked who they thought should be leading urban canopy projects in their local neighborhoods. There is some overlap. People had the chance to pick multiple options, but mostly people really wanted to see the city leading that effort. Which we were a little bit surprised by because we did hear in some of our communications and outreach that people had some tensions with the city. No surprise to anyone here. But they did want to see that the city of Aurora was leading that, which was great because we worked with Hector Barantes a lot at the city of Aurora, and he was really wonderful and he was getting out into the community and just a really fun person to work with. And then Commerce City, we had similar results. People really thought that trees were important. They wanted more trees and that they think about trees every day, which was really good to hear. A lot of the reason they thought about trees every day was because they had a lot of allergies and were thinking about the pollen, but we'll take it. Then we asked them some questions about, the same questions that we asked you. What are the barriers that people have? Because we really wanted to identify, how can we overcome that? Where should resources be emphasized most? So this is, no surprise to any of you, but maintenance, specifically around like pruning and raking, were some of the highest concerns, along with the cost of watering and then professional support. And then there were a few others, safety and rising property value, but we saw that a lot less than we saw the first three. We also asked them, what benefits do trees provide to them in their community? Because we really wanted to see what resonated most with these residents. And so we saw shade, clean air and water, and mental health as the most popular between both Aurora and Commerce City. So as we're working with the cities, we're emphasizing, we're recommending that they really be emphasizing these areas because this is what residents care most about. And then again, we had many other questions, but this is the last one we wanted to highlight. We asked them what would be most useful in a planting and care guide, which was the final part, or not the final part, but another part of the project that we worked on. And people had quite a few interests, but mostly we saw a lot of interest in pruning techniques and tools, planting techniques and like proper processes, and then watering as well, which we were excited to see because then we can address the concerns about the cost of watering. And then coming out of that, we've been working on creating these community tree planting and care guides. Some of them, like in Aurora, we're taking information that already exists from the city and then combining it with these guides that we're working on, or just creating a new guide as in Commerce City. And then a guide as well for the cities themselves to summarize, what questions did we ask? Who did we speak with? What were the main takeaways and lessons learned? And the idea is just for this to be like a living tool and document including all that, information, hopefully addressing misconceptions or concerns that people have. So we have proper planting, recommended tree species, and then other like really localized recommendations and resources to put it all in one spot. One of the challenges that we heard was, concern about everything being in English and needing more translation services, which we were not able to offer as part of this project, but is definitely something that we're recommending. And Aurora is doing a really good job of that. Here are just some of the trees that we're putting in some of the recommended trees that we're putting in the guides. This is, each guide has its own list that's very specific to it. So there is some overlap between Aurora and Commerce City, but we're not doing all the same trees. So not all the trees on this list are going to both cities. And what we're trying to do is make this really accessible to people. We know the Front Range recommended tree list is really useful, but there is a lot of information. And what we were hearing is that people want smaller, like more clear information of like, I want a medium-sized tree. I want it to do these things. And that's all I really care about, and not having to go through a bunch of options. So I'm sure this will change over time. And we may change our opinions on some of these trees, but this is what we're emphasizing right now. And this is the information that we're including, like lifespan, maintenance level, because that's such a big concern to people, benefits and highlights of the trees, that sort of thing.
So for Greeley, we went a little bit of a different direction. Instead of creating a tree planting and care guide, we proposed a design framework for establishing a community urban forest committee. This committee would include community members, city staff, arborists, and other experts who can help plan future tree planting projects, especially in neighborhoods that need them the most. The committee will serve as a bridge between underrepresented communities and city officials, ensuring that community tree needs are clearly communicated and considered in future tree planting decisions. The shift away from creating a tree planting and care guide highlights the importance of understanding what each community truly needs, rather than a one-size-fits-all solution.
Then the last product we had for this project was a project implementation toolkit. So it's taking everything that we did from the GIS map, the database, our community guides, the process we did for community engagement, pulling it all together in one spot. So community leaders, maybe people in city staff positions can use that guide and implement the project and the tools we created in their own communities. So yeah, it's going to include like why this project matters, just a little bit of background, where to find all of our products, and then community engagement framework and questions, and then just like general resources that informed our processes so that they don't have to search for them on their own, because it takes a lot of time, especially when your city staff capacity is low. So that's what this final deliverable was going to be.
So our final products, to summarize, will include a statewide needs assessment, a tree inventory and analysis, community guides and a design framework, and a growing climate-wise tree canopies toolkit. This is going to be for our 3 pilot cities that we have for this project. Together, these provide a comprehensive understanding of which communities would benefit the most from an expanding tree canopy to reduce the effects of extreme heat. Our project has also led to the creation of 2 new capstone projects in our program that will be available in next year's capstone team members to participate in.
And we also have a link if you are interested in receiving our final products. You can put your name on this form, and once they're all finalized, we're going to send them out to you all. So,
and what we hope that this framework encourages other municipalities and organizations across Colorado to create community-informed, data-driven, and city-supported tree planting programs. By doing so, we can help reduce heat-related risks and improve climate resiliency for vulnerable communities. We'd like to thank our partners, Carrie Tomlinson from the Cross-State Forest Service, Carolina Van Horn from the Governor's Office of Climate Preparedness and Disaster Recovery, and Hector Barantes from Aurora, as well as our advisor for this project, Alice Rizmakova, for guiding us throughout this entire project. And thank you all for being an attentive audience. We'd be happy to answer any questions now.
We did have a question about that map that you pulled up, if that is available for everyone to access at this point.
It's not available right now, but it might be. Yeah, so we're working on that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
Sorry.
yes, you won't be able to find it online per se, just yet. We're still kind of touching it up and printing it up, and once we're satisfied with the map, we'll go ahead and distribute it, and it'll be available for everybody.
So question about, like your maps, for example, Commerce City, it's had on there like a 5.5 whatever % canopy. How did land use play into like that score? Because Commerce City has a lot of industrial areas, so not a lot of them for trees.
Do you want to take it since you work there?
We just pulled it from the tree equity score. Yeah,
Or tree
that's
plotter?
what, or tree plotter
Tree
for the
plotter,
map.
pulled it from tree plotter.
Yeah. I work for Commerce City also, so I know that we're working on a tree canopy assessment right now. It's our first one, so we'll have like a better idea of what is played into it. And that assessment, like the report will be available next month. So unfortunately, if I had that report now, I'd have a better answer for you. Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
We just leave it up there.
We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break here. We'll come back at, well, just 30 minutes at 10:05 for a second
Sorry about
presentation.
that.
I'm like, I can't see it. Thanks.
Like your next.
Thank you.
Thank you so
They're
much.
like
Like twist, and then I have to. Oh.
Did it work?
I think so.
Less complaints? You know?
There was something on the line that was not muting, but you know.
Nailed it. Guys. I'm gonna get rid of it. You're talking. All right, everybody, let's grab our seats and get rolling again. All right, we're gonna have a quick announcement from Thaddeus talking about need for logs with the story. So Thaddeus, hop up here.
Good morning, everybody. You may have seen my email on the Urban Forestry listserv. At the State Forest Service, we're partnering with CSU Square to create an urban forestry exhibit, which will be highlighting a few different species that we find commonly in our urban forest. Right now, we're looking for a batch of silver maple and ash trees, which we can use to make architectural millwork and wall paneling. Ideally, something with a story behind it that we can incorporate into the larger educational exhibit of the project. So we need about 1,000 rough board feet of each. That's, if you think of a 16-inch log by 8 feet, that's about 10 to 14 of those. So if anyone has any removals coming up that we may be able to incorporate a story into this project, feel free to reach out to me or talk with me after this. I think it'll be a pretty awesome opportunity for urban forestry here in Colorado.
And our next speaker graciously hopped in last minute, and we had a little bit of a mix-up on our second speaker. So Ross Wrigley is the Executive Director of Plant Select, and today he's going to be talking about a new tool they're working on to help with contract growing. And so what that sums it up, Ross. All right, you're up.
Here we go. Thank you. Hey, so I'm Ross Wrigley with Plant Select, and I have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to go fairly quickly. But you just heard a bunch of information from students doing studies and things like that. And what do you do with that information? Do you think about yourself as like a forester, as an engineer? You know, you're getting engineering kind of stuff, you know, information about how to build something into the future. And what are we building? You know, what are we planting today that we are, what are we planting today that is going to be around in 60 years? Well, of course, it's trees. And so obviously, get this figured out here. There we go. And so this is the tree canopy. So you look at this today, this is what it is. But as foresters, imagine yourself in the engineering department. You would be looking at this going, what does this look like in 60 years? How do I manage this now? Right? So do you have the tools to actually get the trees to change those percentages, to navigate what the future will bring? So you can go on to this website with the University of Maryland, and I think I typed in Jamestown or Johnstown because that's what this address was, and this is what it could look like 60 years out, right? So we need trees and genetics from those areas just as backup for 60 years from now. Now, how does Freddie or any other city forester here get those trees to market, to their pocket, in their city? It's a long road. And so we all have, this is my new motto, and it's an old saying, but you know, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So think about your system, what you have in place. And I'd actually ask you to erase all your thinking about buying trees and things like that. because we have a lot of knee-jerk reactions about how we purchase trees, and it's really weird. They'll come up, you'll see. But anyway, if we install a really good system, we can move forward in a way that we can manage the future a little bit better. So in our current system, there are some disconnects, and that's nobody's fault. The first disconnect is city foresters can only buy the trees that are available on the market, right? Gertie, everybody knows this. It's whatever Louis is going to grow is, and whatever Dan tells him he needs to grow, that's what you get to choose from, right? That's a disconnect. That you can't. It's a disconnect and a problem in our system. So if foresters want more oaks, like Tim Buchanan, he goes to Lehto Valley Wholesale and sees a whole plethora of pears. Yes. Why? Because pears sell to the contractors. So you're buying off availability. Disconnect number two, city foresters have to use their budget in the year that it was budgeted. Now, this is nobody's fault. This is what has evolved because accountants, city council, they think trees are as widgets. But you just go to the store and get some. Whatever's there, you can get it, substitute it. But we need to change this. But that's a huge, huge disconnect. And the other thing you guys don't forget, but a lot of people forget is it takes 5 years to get a tree, at least, to a sizable amount. It's just a problem that gets in our way, so we have to recognize it and then try to overcome it. What did I say down there? Most city council members don't remember this, or they don't know what a quality tree should look like. And I look at all of your jobs as really to do the best you can in the city as forestry, but you have to present that to your city council. So you have to understand what they're looking at. And they don't see quality, they don't see rootstocks, they don't see air prune potted grown plants. Disconnect number four, that nurseries don't want to grow trees without sales history. This is a no-brainer for any nursery in the industry. I am not going to grow those trees from Oklahoma if I don't think they're going to sell. And if you look at it right now, nurseries pay for everything out of their pocket for the 5 years that they're growing a tree. They don't ask you for a dime. It's all at the end when you pick up that tree. And when you pick up that tree, what you're paying for is all the plastic that was thrown out, all the water that was used on all the other trees that died. You're paying for all that. So that's a disconnect that we can also work on to help nurseries get beyond like that nervousness of not having a sales history. Disconnect number five. This one's hard for all of us. Unproven, sustainable practices are perceived as too risky. Now, as a municipality, you actually have a lot of buying power with nurseries. You could start directing them with maybe a biodegradable plastic, or maybe you start buying your trees as bare root, so you don't have plastic, or maybe you start putting in your RFPs something about how they're watered, or no chemicals used. These things can be done, and you have that power. It's just not being utilized yet. So there's a lot of waste. And in 2009, there was a ball study, shrinkage study. And basically it said about all the plants, including Woody's everything, when the planned crop, when it moved to the propagation stage, about 20% of everything that was grown, there was shrinkage. It's really hard to say why there was shrinkage. Was because the irrigation wasn't on, somebody forgot a day, or whatever it was, but 20% basically didn't make it to the next stage of the production stage in the process of growing up trees. And so now your 11% in the production stage disappears again. And by the time you get to the for sale stage, retail or wholesale or whatever it is, you are at 9% shrinkage. Now, when I talk to large nurseries really around the country, 5% is acceptable for them to throw away sellable plants, trees. Think of 5%. Now think of all the trees. Every nursery you walk into and think if they're throwing away 5% of everything I see here in the spring, think how much water and energy and fertilizer and all the other garbage that goes with growing trees and plants is wasted. So how do we start to change that? We build a different system. So first off, city foresters, you all do RFPs, right? So you have that in process. Now you get to specify in the future what trees you want. Right now, I know a lot of people that do a lot of seed collecting. We have Scott Skogerbo over there that knows where a ton of plants are. And you can ask him to go get them, right? And all you have to do is have him get the seedlings or the nuts or whatever it is, the genetics into the nursery and then, or to the nursery. So then your RFP could start down the road of being completed. So city foresters, in your RFP, you should start specifying, I want to know what rootstocks are on my trees that I'm ordering. I want to know where the provenances are, and I want you to prove it. So there's a way to prove things, and it's called and I always forget the name. Oh yeah, distributed ledger technology. That's what it is. Put it in your RFP. Have that happen, because now if there's a system in place to actually document where trees and plants are coming from and what rootstocks they're on, you can actually attain your goals of having diverse plants around your city. Anyway, city foresters, this is the caveat. Now think about this. You have the power and you can work with the nurseries. So we know that they pay for everything up front for 5, 10 years or whatever it is to grow a tree up. But what if the cities decided to pay for pay money towards that tree every year that it was being grown up? So think about this. We've gone through, Freddie's been the one who highlighted this. The stopgap is that accountants in your municipality say, here's a budget, spend it. Here's a budget, spend it. We don't want to have contract growth because it doesn't fit our system. But Davy Tree over there has a contract for 5 years. How do they get a contract for 5 years? Because it's service, right? And it doesn't matter what tree it's on. It's just you're going to take care of all these trees. So contracts do exist in municipalities. But the way you have to sell it to the accountant is, okay, we're buying a sapling for the first year and we're servicing it to growth for the next 5 years. So imagine now if you share the risk with a nursery that you're asking a quote from to pay them once a year a percentage. What would a percentage of that tree cost? Then you would actually get more buy-in from the nurseries to grow exactly what you wanted because they're not taking a risk really. So what would that look like? How would that kind of work on the back end? Both the city and the municipality and the nursery would be able to look at software that shows what stage those trees are in, and you could prove it. It has to be documented. And I'll show you that in a little bit, but you can prove it. And so you could sit in your office and not know, you might be like, where's my liner? Is it still in Oregon or is it at Fort Collins Wholesale? Well, you could get online and actually look. So this is the whole system to bring new climate-ready trees or experimental trees that you think are good, or let's say you have great trees in your city anyway, Neil. So you want to go collect scion and have all the other cities in the neighboring area use those trees too. You could do that. You could specify it. Neil would go get the genetics and give it to the nursery for Scott to graft. And then 5 years later, you've got something, right? So this is kind of how the 5-year thing would look. We have Pearl Mountain coming down the pike, and I'll just throw it out now. I think we have about 200 that were just budded on trees in Oregon. We could put in a contract grow for these trees, which is super great tree. It's a manzano that's hybridized with a sugar maple, and it's super red. But every year, this is when your saplings are the cheapest, right? As your tree increases, it increases in value. We all know that. So you would probably start with a small percentage, paying down the first year, in the second year, in the third year, and you would pay it to your local nursery. You're not involved with anybody else in the supply chain. Why? Because municipalities do not want to mess with people in a supply chain that aren't even in their area. But with this documentation, you can have the nursery pay them, and they're already paying for the liners that they're going to bring in, right? But they can document it so that the city knows that that step was crossed and we move to the next step into the next tree. So this new system is really going to do a lot, and it ticks off a lot of boxes, and it's hard to wrap my head around and things like that, but it's coming, and it's coming close. So water savings, imagine saving 5% of the water. You know, that would be a good sell to city council? How about better transparency on plant provenance? This has been a huge issue, right? This is the climate stuff. This here tree is King Canute in its native habitat in Oklahoma, right there. And they're all ready for sale, or they're starting to come for sale, but we could get a whole bunch more if we all put in an order or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you just have to put money where your mouth is and say, that's a good tree, trust Freddie, trust other people that have seen it. But this goes down even further, where and this actually happened to me when I was at Fort Collins Wholesale Nursery. Boulder we had a contract grow for 50 grand and Boulder scrapped 20 grand of it. Why? Because they didn't want sensation maples. They wanted seed grown maples that could be male or female. And they didn't want woods rose genetics from Idaho. Yeah. So what this program does is it allows Boulder, who is actually very interested in this program, to sign up and go collect their own genetics, send it to Fort Collins Wholesale Nursery. Now, Crystal Strauss over at Larimer, in our county, she can go collect her genetics and give them to Fort Collins Wholesale Nursery. They could have the same plants side by side in the same hydrozone. And this thing gets documented enough times that they don't get confused. And it's not like every other plant where the last tag to go out is what you say it is. It's got to be tracked through the system, right? Otherwise, the contract falls apart. So why else is this a huge deal? Because in a world where big companies are gobbling up smaller companies, the biodiversity of plant choices is going down, right? This is a way to increase it. And municipalities actually play a huge, huge role in this change because you can dictate, you have the money. And especially with ash trees going out, you're going to have more probably. But the thing is you can demand genetics that are seed grown. You can demand clones. You can demand the rootstock. And you can bring in new genetics. Now, this is not just for trees. This is for shrubs, perennials, grasses, whatever. So you can do that. Another big bonus to this system is having a trace supply chain that's live. You can actually start to monitor and shut down diseases from coming into the state, okay? So in 3 years, lettuce, it's mandatory, is gonna have to use the same technology. What did I say, digital? No, it's not digital. No. DLT is what the short is. But at any rate, because so many people were dying from listeria, they need to be able to shut down the supply chain at the known spot instead of like taking time to figure out where it came from. So this technology is coming down here right now. This system, Plant Select, why is Plant Select doing this? Because I went through the same silly experience. I did 2 years of contract growing of trees, hoping that the nursery heritage would make them more available because I got into their system and sales showed history. It doesn't work like that. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. And this system is really a bigger system than Plant Select. It doesn't involve just Plant Select plants. It involves all plants, and it probably won't even be branded Plant Select. So who would you do the licensing to? It's a subscription is what it is. And then I'll tell you right now, we're shooting at $1,750. That's pretty inexpensive. That is not, QuickBooks is about as much as that. And that's a year. But you think about all the things that you might be able to do, and I'll show you in a little bit here. But municipalities, and I put on there with the potential of making money. Everybody's talked about some sort of HOA kind of package, correct? You could actually sell that online before it's ever grown, and 2 years later have a HOA receive that, and you could charge an additional fee on top of your RFP. Make sense? Anyway, growers, nurseries, I think it's going to smooth out a lot of things for them because they're not going to be focused on what do we grow? What do we grow? That's a huge question. They'll just be like, hey, we got the answer. Let's just focus on delivering quality and what people want. Arboretums, developers, native plant nurseries, native plant breeders, and yeah, I mean, other nonprofits can use this in everything. Well, it's going to be good. So I gave this presentation to the city of Boulder, and I use this as what do they get for that $1,750, right? Well, you get a back end. This is the brains, pretty much, and who's ever going to be the administrator on the back end, who occasionally goes out to the field or whatever. Down here, you get 5 different apps. You get licenses for 5 apps. The apps are the mule of this whole program. It keeps things tracking through. It's made very, very simply. So you have one, Plant Select will have one, these guys will have one license, and then you also get a third feature. And this is a public-facing feature that is the, I know it sounds like I'm trying, this is a public-facing feature where you could actually do those sales that I was just mentioning about, like a HOA package or whatever. But let's just pretend. I get lots of questions just like, well, a lot of nurseries are too cheap. They don't want to pay $1,700. Well, they can, but they want to participate because they have the liners. And you may know they have the liners and you want them to grow it for you. So we can license out. Plant Select can get more licenses for the apps and let them and be the manager of the user on their field in their nursery so that it fits this ledger that goes through the process, and they can actually complete and be a part of the contract that you're demanding. Any nursery in the country or in the world even. So I talk about the app. This is how simple it is, and we will have 2-minute demonstrations how to use these things for each step. But this is the home page. There's only 8 things there. You go into settings. That's all the 8. That's the settings that you have. But this is the supply chain, and this is where, when you break it down, it just seems like we should have been done in this 100 years ago. Okay, 9 steps, right? Basically, you got to go out in nature and pick up whatever you want. Or you go out to your nursery stock on your nursery and document where that came from, that it came from here. And then all those other ones, usually what happens is a person at a nursery is usually assigned to one job. So you have Scott collecting the genetics, and he'll be using number 1. You have the person at the nursery who receives all the products. They'll be using number 2. You'll have the person who is growing the product and moving it into production. They'll use number 3, right? So there's not a big, which one do I pick? And it'll actually tell you if you scan the QR code. But this is what we do currently. And anyway, this is from Denver Botanic Gardens. I got seed, which was great, of Rambler. And look at all the missteps we have already in my number 1 thing. From Denver Botanic Gardens, they got where it's from, great. Accession number that has the history of the plant at their facility, but nobody else gets to see it. But then look at the name. Rambler's not the cultivar. The cultivar is P022 something else. And I'll guarantee you that as we move into the future and marketing firms start to really get their teeth into plants, you're going to see more codes like that. And it's going to be more confusing. How are you going to know what you're going to get? Anyway, this is the way it's done. There's the plant. You go in, you'll go, if you're going to that plant, you hit number 1, and you can see at the bottom there's 6 steps to filling out number 1. It takes less than 30 seconds. You don't need Wi-Fi. You don't need cellular. You don't need that stuff. It all uploads and syncs when you come back into range. So on the first one, you're basically saying, oh, I'm me, this is the date, that'll always be true. The product, what's the product? Now, when you go collecting seed, you normally 90% will go out looking for something. You'll have that pre-programmed in from somebody on the back end, and they'll do a selection. This is the thing it is. We put on there at the bottom, select contract number, because we were really associating this with, what contract is it going to go to for the nursery? So it's all kept in order. But that could also be a collection trip or anything else. The next thing you do is take a picture. You have to have your GPS on. GPS does not operate through cell phones and Wi-Fi or cellular and Wi-Fi. It's a different system. It will document where that picture is taken. You can collect seed, you can collect scions. And then what you do is you go to the next thing, you say quantity. So I have 2 pounds of seed, I have 10 scions. That's what I'm doing. I go in, and then I have this picture to take of a QR code. This is a blank sheet of QR codes. You should just have them hanging around, and if you're going out to work and you're getting something new, you put it on a tag, and we can make tags however you want, but you have a QR code that goes with it, you scan it, and it'll autofill the number. And that's important. Just scanning it versus entering it reduces the risks of anything, errors happening. But ultimately you have this. Now that you have this, you don't really need anything else on there. Just to say, even if it's wrong, somebody will check it to that. You verify you got your quantities and your product right, and you hit OK, and that's it. And then you're in. And so this was actions is where you'll find, things moving through the system. Like if you're at a certain stage, This I put up there just to show you there's no Wi-Fi on this, and this is a dummy phone. There's no cell on it, but I could still scan that QR code and it would tell me what it is. So you have the information there. Now, are there any questions? Like I'm talking fast and anyway, no. Yes.
I heard your presentation before. Where are you in the development of this? Like
January. January. I am looking, and so Scott didn't even know, nor did Louis, but Fort Collins Wholesale has already purchased a license. So Louis is going to be out there scanning trees.
Go, Louis.
That's right. Let me see where this, I want to show you I'm going to show you a little bit of the back end if I can find it. I know I saw it before. Is it this one? Yeah, it is. I got it. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm looking for Bex right up there. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. So this is the guts. And what I like about it is it's simple enough that it doesn't take long to understand. I know everybody has their own software, current system, and things like that. This is not a POS system. This is for contracts, large orders, plants in the future, whatever you want. But at any rate, down here at the bottom, this is where everything's you can export to Excel, and you upload to the program. So you would load like your vendors, your people that you are using, your staff or whoever else, your logo, your templates for your contracts or RFPs. You can do that fairly quickly. Oh, I can't see it. Oh, don't worry, I got it. I'll figure it out. I just have to look up here.
Yeah, and then you gotta find the mouse.
Oh no. Oh no. Let me try an arrow. No. Hold on. We get it. Okay. I keep the mouse close. Okay, thanks. At any rate, when Scott goes out and does something, you'll end up doing a verification and it'll show up here. And so somebody in the office will verify. They'll be able to look at the picture and be like, yeah, that's what he was supposed to be doing, collecting Ribosarium or whatever it was. And then they would approve it, and then it would go into the transfer, and it would go into the next bin to go move on. Now, ultimately, what happens is I'll just show you real quickly. This is the supply chain. Okay, so you have facilities on this end, you have nodes on this end. You can search where your plants are. You can go in and see what is in here. These are just all kinds of tests of things. And if you notice, the top ones I think say closed, and the bottom ones say open. That means if it's closed, it's moved to the next step. If it's open, it's still in that thing. But then you can open them, and you can, let's say, let me see here. We start to get to what that was collected, and this is where it was collected. And I don't know which one this is. Is this my office or something? At any rate, the genetics lab, you put in a dummy name, the Xanthoceras. But you get to see all the stuff down here, and this is how it moves through. So absorb to next, and then let me see if there's more. There's lot data. There is, so that you can look for the people, the times, whatever you need. Now, Boulder actually, or somebody I was talking to said, gosh, wouldn't that be awesome if you heard like a nursery had a disease that was potential? You could go back through and actually look through, was my plant there at that nursery during that time? You could sit in your office. You don't have to call them. Anyway, it has all the information about that stuff. And ultimately what you get to is like your product view. And then you have journey to origin, let's just say Jack Mays. And you can see that it works backwards. City of Fort Collins received it. It went through all these different steps. You can, here. So let's say, this is why I think it's really important for native plant communities, is because you'll be able to show the public where your plants actually came from if they're buying that plant and they expect it. But you can see down here, you can see that it started out in propagation, whatever this Xanthoceras, it moved out to the production facilities, a couple different hoop houses, then it moves into Louis Field, and then it ends up down at the city holding yard. Now, when they go to plant that tree, they could actually scan it again. And think about, this is all downloadable as Excel, but think about how valuable the information will be in 100 years knowing where that plant came from. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So then let's look at it this way. Let's look at this is what the app does, tracing it through basically the supply chain. I'm hoping everybody can see that. But basically you see this is every time it's been tagged or scanned. But what'll happen is if you have a rootstock, it'll come through this underneath, and then at some point it joins up with this product, and that's all traceable. Now think about how valuable that'll be in 100 years to know where that tree came from on that rootstock. Now, where you all are going to be maybe working with it is the contracts, right? So here's the buyer dashboard. You have the logo. You could have an administrator be managing all this. And Freddie said he would share templates for contracts or RFPs, but you'd make your RFP here. You would, in your RFPs, it shows you've got 2 bids, it's active, there's a draft, there's things like that. And then on the buyer side, or that's the municipality, the seller side, the nursery, they're going to have their own information. So this case, it's plant select, active RFPs, we're going to respond to. We can go into one and see the PDF. The PDF over here is the proposal, and then you can see the list of plants that you're asking for, right? So in this program, the contract or the RFP is separate than the plants. It merges in that field, but actually, if you're doing a bid on something, you download the Excel spreadsheet, say what you can provide for how much. Then when you upload it and start your bid, then it'll merge it back together and let Freddie know, or whoever's on the other end, what is happening with the evaluations. So then you have these 2 were rejected for whatever reason. This one was contracted. So you get to see what happens, and it happens in real time. So a lot of times nurseries will have 2 people doing 2 bids, and the time delay between maybe one person getting accepted versus another, and then they double sold their plants. You can manage that a little bit better. But ultimately, what you'd end up doing is then somebody in the office, whoever you want to have do this, they can compare the bids. They go through an evaluation. You see a score 70, or what's the other one? I thought there were a couple I can't see totally, but you can reevaluate, let's say, and then it just goes through the scope of proposal. This is all the stuff that you guys have. It's a triple bottom line: people, profit, environment. That's what it is. And then when you get to accepting one, then it immediately changes over into a contract. So then you can have the contract and make sure every year the steps are happening. And then at the end, you collect your product and go home and then plant. I think that's all I have to share in this thing. Is there any questions? Yes. Scott, you were first.
I just want to say that when you see everything all at once, 5 years of button suppressed, it just seems kind of overwhelming. But one thing that when we were practicing this, just to see how the whole process worked, it's a lot of time in between each step. And so it's not as overwhelming as it seems, and it's quite easy because, like, for instance, when the system we did before, we would collect the seed. We'd have a list of plants that we needed to collect the seed. And then all we had to do at that time was to take a picture of the place where we collected the seed. And it's the same thing. That's one click right there. And then 3 or 4 months later, when the seed was planted, we have the whole growing season to click it again. And so it's a slow step, one step at a time over 5 years. It's not as overwhelming as seeing everything, what it can do all at once. So I think it's going to be a great program.
Thanks, Scott. I forget about that. It's true. It feels like it's like, whoa, fire hose. Yes.
And what scale of organizations you sell, like, I know you said would you sell to a county level? Like
Everybody.
Boulder County with all the cities and.
Yeah. So we're still figuring out, like, let's say you have Parks Department, Forestry, right now we could use it as one, but maybe in the future it'd be two. But it would be county, state, Carrie, it would be everybody. And I think, to be honest with you, I want personally, well, I think it should be a cheap licensing fee. It shouldn't be for free, but the more people that use it, the cheaper it gets. So I will say that on the back end, there is a caveat to this. So when you put out a bid to a nursery and they know that they're not taking any risk on growing the tree because it's already sold, that every year there's going to be a transaction fee. This is what we're planning for to keep the system going. So that transaction fee doesn't affect any of the bids. It ends up on the municipality side of who's ever purchasing it. Could be a developer, but that transaction fee is fairly minimal compared to like all the running around you'd have to do otherwise to keep track of plants coming through a system. But half of that transaction fee, we're right now looking at 10% total. So 5% would go back into the software, and just to make it better. Because this has when I think about this program, I think, what is it going to be like in 60 years? I don't know. It won't look the same, I guarantee that, but I'm 90% sure the technology it uses, it will have evolved from this kind of technology, and that's what you'll have. So it should be global, really. I mean, seriously, I want to make it so easy that nobody's really gonna want to do anything else to combat it, or compete. So.
First, I just think it's visionary. I think you deserve a great deal of credit, and Freddie.
Yeah,
Freddie, you, yes. Deserve a great deal of credit for coming up with this idea and bringing in other technologies into the tree world. Because like you said, I think this is the future. So for me, I'm very excited about the idea that this will encourage the growth of more diverse species, more resilient species, and then also having the ability to pre-sell or support the nursery industry in that way. That's just an exciting thing. I think it's the future, really. So thank you for that. Thank you. So that being said, questions. So is there a way, say 5 years is a long time, I guess. Well, not as long as it used to be. But in terms of that, like, say you got halfway through a contract and Freddie's like, I have like way more, I don't know, Shanton maples that I need, right? Like, can I then split that off and sell it like as a marketplace on this platform also, or have a separate bid where you would? Yeah.
So you could possibly release the plants because you've been paying for them every year. We've also had nurseries say, what they hate about dealing with cities is all of a sudden they have the budget this year and they won't have it next year, so they want to take their plants early.
Yes.
Well, then how do they, how is that documented? Well, because it's priced out every year, that's your plant. You can buy it that year to avoid something the future year. And I think that if you're going to do what you said, that's called like releasing your order is what it essentially is. That let's say you already paid for 2 years. If you release your order, then you really only owe the nursery that 1 year of whatever that is. And you'll have to negotiate then with that nursery whether or not they'll sell it to somebody else or not.
Yes.
But that can be worked out.
Yeah. Could you see this platform going eventually to a consumer level? In other words, say the National Arbor Day Foundation's Community Canopy program.
Yes.
These guys do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Not all the way down to individuals.
Okay.
It's for massive amounts. It's wholesale, and what I see is massive amounts of plant material.
What's massive amounts? Because Gertie's talking 4,000 trees.
That's massive enough. That's beyond massive enough.
That's something that could make a nice fit.
Yeah.
But we're in the middle in that we would put the trees out and then we would turn and resell them to communities. And it works kind of what Gertie does with their papers. It's like she keeps track of it from genetics pretty much through where does it go in the community.
Right.
And so we just have kind of that middle step. You have a middle range licensing fee for someone like a nonprofit.
There will be different licensing fees for breeders. Oh, I didn't show you one thing that was really cool. So this is why I think about for breeders is that breeders will want to submit plants, or they want to know where their plants go in the supply chain. And if people are using this and their plants are being purchased, you can see right here, you can dial in to where those plants are. And this is where the genetics comes from and where you can see all that is. But for a nonprofit, there will probably be a separate fee, but I don't know what that is. Because you know what, I'd like to get a grant here for licensing municipalities and possibly some nurseries to get started so that we could really get on the road with this. But I don't think, I'm thinking hundreds of trees. I mean, you know, $2,000-3,000 is probably enough. But I don't want, you know, you don't want residentials doing their landscape on it. You know what I mean?
Per year, right?
No, what? It's 1750s per year. It's a subscription, yeah. And that's, you know, we kind of picked it out of the air.
Yeah.
Right now. So like I say, it's not enough for Plant Select to recoup, but it's enough. It's just below what I think, you know, as the value is. So it's a good starting place. But I expect that to go down. And especially for municipalities in a sense, because if you're paying the transaction fee, that's where things happen.
Yeah.
It's not a yearly subscription.
But you know, as Colorado State Forest Service, like, we are definitely involved and partnered with you on this. So there might be opportunities for organizations like CTC to get a grant for that. So just, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Needs to be on the record. Ross, what about training for how to implement this technology?
2-minute video training. And because you're the first one to sign up, you're going to get a lot of extra help.
I'm gonna need it.
It's true. It's true. But there'll be, for each one of those different areas on the platform and on the app, there'll be just a 2-minute video. So that's already been, that was part of the contract. The Plant Select's been working on this for a year. I've been working in my head on it for many more, but we were lucky and got grants to pay for a prototype. And that's what we have going. And it'll be functioning in January.
Tell us what the name of it is.
Oh, if you guys have any better names. So I came up with this week. It was the Alan Taylor project, but now I'm kind of calling it the Conservation Plant Procurement Network. And the reason I'm calling it all those 3 names is because it's not just for trees. It's for native plants. It's for breeders. It's for developers. It's a network to procure plants and conserve water, conserve the environment, conserve plastic, fertilizer.
I have another idea for
Oh, good. What?
Resilient trees are sexy. Gotta have pop.
We'll put that in the parentheses there. Okay. Any other questions? Yes,
Are
Ernie.
there other types of flexibilities that are built into the system? Like, for example, when the trees are young and there's a lot more mortality. I mean, granted, we're making well-informed decisions about species and things like that, but wipes out big numbers, the ability to substitute other plant material and things like that.
The answer is yes, and I'm going to let Freddie answer a little bit more, but I will say that part of that 5% or the part I've kind of budgeted for some sort of insurance. I don't think we'll need it, but that's just in place. But Freddie, you want to answer that from a buyer side?
Yeah, the way we're dealing with that is the RFP is basically a substitutions clause. The agreement virtually is a delivered product, but you're also taking on risk by paying every year. That's part of the reason they forestry trees are assuming risk. And so there is, instead of nursery assuming all the risk, it's a split risk. So yeah, you could lose money on it, but you know, roll stuff up. Hey, if I can't deliver on this is the nursery willing to substitute for a set price in the RFP. So that's kind of front end.
And like I said, you're already paying for all those losses every time you buy a tree anyway, because that's packaged in the price you're paying.
I think the big thing on this, when we were kind of in the early stages of the city looking at contract growing is with economies of scale issue, right? You couldn't order enough as a single municipality to get a nursery to buy. I mean, you could have, with Fort Collins Wholesale, we always have a handshake agreement of, hey, if you line this out, we'll buy it. And that works most of the time, and we try to honor that. This is a way to cement those things, and then as more municipalities get into it, basically you create this marketplace where on Ross's end, he can see what everybody's ordering, and we can be sharing that data between cities on what we're planting. It really helps. We also can eventually, once you get planted, start sharing mortality data, sharing all these other data pieces of provenance, mortality, what nursery I get it from, what diseases I'm seeing, what issues I'm seeing. All of a sudden, we created this, basically created a clarity to what we're all doing. Because we're all doing the same thing, we're all having the same issues, but there's the data behind it is non-existent. So this basically creates maybe more data than we need, but rather have more data that we can look into later than no data. So
I want to show you one other, thank you, Freddie. I want to show you one other thing here. Is, if I can get to it, is this the company who we hired to do this is out of Arvada. And now, she's Louise's, man. Hold on. I need this bar. Oh, well, what I was going to say was with each product, you can, if you wanted to document your carbon footprint, you could actually do that. So there's a spot for it to say how much water, if somebody actually documents how much water they're spending on it. And I may have lost. Oh, there we go. Go to product view. I think it's in product view. Now, next one up there. Here we go. Thank you so much for getting that back. I think it's in here where you would have, I think it's here where you would then have the lot. No, that's not it. Hold on here. It's a different one. It's the, it shows here, right here. So you'd be able to enter in your carbon footprint, your living wage paid. This format was set up to make fair wages in third world countries and things like that. But this is all set to go if you want to start including that. If nurseries wanted to start documenting it, then cities might have more information about how much their carbon footprint coming from the nursery of how much that tree cost carbon footprint wise to make.
That's awesome. Also, in terms of climate resiliency and how we're going to see those things change over time, have you thought about how, it goes to Freddie's point, like in terms of data collecting for what varietals and things are going to actually survive for 30 years, right? Like the research being done by Dan Bertram and John Martin at the Hub will play into this too. But I can see this being a tool for determining where trees came from, but also where they could go in the future, right? So
yeah, I think that's where kind of it becomes that data analysis. So you say essentially when you plant the seed, you've assigned it a number. That number can go into your inventory when you orient. And if we're sharing that like CO tree view or whatever we want to do, all of a sudden you have this massive data set of what's been planted in from where, and you can track that back to where you collected the seed. So we have a big freeze event where we have a long period of drought. If there's trends, we can start to track those. And so that's where I think as far as future predictions, and then we're working on CSC working on a tool for the front end of sort of way we can look at the climate now, see if we can predict where we should be getting seed in the first place. And so there's a greater ecosystem here, but this is just the big missing piece of how we combine this stuff is what we're trying to solve first.
Totally.
Any other questions? I think I've done my time. I want to thank you all.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks.
All right. We'll wrap up here. Our next meeting is going to be on January 22nd. We don't have any locations set yet. So Christine will be in touch. It's been a lot of fun. And thank you all for coming today. And
CEUs, if did you register online? Hopefully you didn't, because then I'm doing double work. But I will have a paper up here. Write legibly your name and cert number, and you will receive 2 CEUs from.
Oh, if you have more questions, or email director@plantselect.org, or if you want more of a personalized demo or diving into it. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Ross.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, well, the greatness happens after, not this. Feel like I'm here selling something. It is really exciting. It's big changes. I could just see Dr. Kletz's head going down. He's on the board. And he's just like, I don't want any know this or any